Solitary Shining by Ying An. If people who study the path are intending to concentrate on Zen, they should only concentrate on the Zen of the solitary shining of a lone lamp in the hall of nirvana. Do not set up specific periods, hoping to awaken to the path within a certain time. That is laughable. This Zen has no trouble and no pain. The only important thing is to step back and trust completely. Hang your pack high and break your staff. Stiffen your spine and be like wood or stone inside, and like open space outside. Suddenly the tub of lacquer comes apart, and the 5 clusters and 18 elements are washed clear and clean. All beings are suddenly liberated. Once you have seen this highway, it is not the place to stop. When you arrive at clear understanding of universal truth, only then will you find true and false, right and wrong, clearly distinguished in every case. This is called insuperably great, independent spiritual mastery. Bad Friends by Ying An. Recently, a kind of devil has emerged, referred to in the teachings as bad friends. They expound different interpretations, claiming to help people. Some teach people to stop their minds and not think at all, cutting off any stirring thought the moment it arises. Some people teach to do nothing at all, not even burn any incense or perform any prostrations. Some only teach people to rationally understand past and present, just like bumbling professors. Some refer to what the ancient adepts held forth with naked hearts and claim they were setting up schools. Some see a student come and utter a saying that seems right, then half a day later pose a question with another saying. The student presents another saying, and if it fits, they say this one has penetration. Now tell me, do these ways of helping people actually live up to direct pointing to mind? Clearly, there is no connection at all. Steps on the Way by Huait Ang. Those who would learn Buddhahood should just break through the seeds of karma by means of the power of great devotion, then recognize cause and effect and be wary of sin and virtue. Detach from all mental objects. Stop all thoughts. Do not let either good thoughts or bad thoughts enter your thinking. Do not keep either Buddhist teachings or worldly phenomena in mind. Let go of body and mind until you reach a state of great rest, like letting go over a cliff 10 miles high, being like open space. And don't produce representations of discriminations of random thoughts arising and passing away. The moment of use sticks in your mind, use the sword of wisdom to cut it right off, not letting it continue. Cover the Universe by Huait Ang. Zen is not thought. The path has no achievement. Yet if not thought, it is not Zen, and without achievement, it is not the path. At this point, where do you arrive? When you do not fall into consciousness, how do you approach? As soon as you get into clusters and elements, you're already a lifetime away. What you must do is cover the whole universe with no opinion about Buddha or doctrine, bringing it up in the midst of sharp edges, putting it to use in heated situations. Just trust in it thus, and naturally every step will tread on real ground. You can hold on and be the master, go along with things or spurn things, setting out and setting aside according to the time. When you turn upward, Buddhas and devils disappear without a trace. Mountains and seas vanish. When you turn downward, clerics are clerics and layfolk are layfolk. You transcend seeing and hearing, get rid of all dependence, and ride at leisure on top of sound and form, mastering that which startles the crowd. Objectivity and Subjectivity by Bai Chang. Things have never declared themselves empty, nor do they declare themselves form, and they do not declare themselves right, wrong, defiled, or pure. Nor is there a mind that binds and fetters people. It is just because people themselves give rise to vain and arbitrary attachments that they create so many kinds of understanding, produce so many kinds of opinion, and give rise to many various likes and fears. Just understand that things do not originate of themselves. All of them come into existence from your own single mental impulse of imagination, mistakenly clinging to appearances. If you know that mind and objects fundamentally do not contact each other, you will be set free on the spot. Everything is in a state of quiescence right where it is. This very place is the site of enlightenment. The burden of nothing. A student asked Lao Tzu, "How about when I don't bring a single thing?" Lao Tzu said, "Where did you get this?" What and who? A student asked Lao Tzu, "What is turning the wheel of the teaching in fire?" Lao Tzu said, "Understood everywhere." The student asked, "What about after understanding?" Lao Tzu said, "No wheel of teaching to turn." The student asked, "What should be done about temporary lapses in presence?" Lao Tzu said, "Who informs you about them?" The obstruction of non-obstruction. A student asked Lao Tzu, "What is one expression of non-obstruction?" Lao Tzu said, "Thus." The student said, "This is still an obstruction." Lao Tzu said, "Yes, it is." Inherent Nature by Pai Cheng. Inherent nature cannot be named. Originally, it is not mundane, nor is it holy. It is neither defiled nor pure. It is not empty nor existent either, and it is not good or bad. When it is involved with impure things, it is called the two vehicles of divinity and humanity. When mental involvement in purity and impurity is ended, the mind does not dwell in bondage or liberation. It has no mindfulness of striving or non-striving, or of bondage or liberation. Then, even though it is within birth and death, the mind is free. Ultimately, it does not commingle with the vanities, the empty illusions, material passions, life and death, or media of sense. Transcendent, without abode, it is not constrained by anything at all. It comes and goes through birth and death as through an open door. Realization by Non-Chuan. The basic attainment is not produced by production. Manjushri said, "It is only realized by realization, not produced by production." The immemorial tradition has been only to teach people to understand the way and not seek anything else. If you think about it and rationalize, that all belongs to statement and doctrine. The teaching says that those who are obsessed with canonical studies are hunters and fishers who kill universal Buddhism for profit. The eye of the living. Someone asked Lao Tzu, "What is the eye of the living?" Lao Tzu said, "No warmth." Zen Masters by Tung Shan. Zen masters must clearly understand themselves, must have discriminating perception of objective truth, and must call on teachers everywhere before they can determine the religious heritage of the Zen school and see where water and milk part ways. True Nature by Shi Shuang. The real nature of ignorance is the Buddha nature. The ephemeral body is the body of teachings. If you can trust in this, you will inevitably save energy. This could refer to the story of Siddhana entering the Tower of Maitreya, where infinite doors of truth were everywhere. He attained universal non-resistance and realized the non-origination of phenomena. This is called acceptance of phenomena as non-originated. Infinite realms and objects, subjective and objective, are on a hair tip without obstruction. But I ask you, what is the immediate moment of consciousness? The very essence of your ignorance is actually the intangible, luminous nature of your fundamental awakeness. It is because you do not realize the root source of birth and death that you cling to the false as real. Under the influence of falsehood, you fall into repetitious routines and suffer all sorts of misery. If you can turn attention around and look back, you will realize the original true nature is unborn and imperishable. And this is why it is said that the real nature of ignorance is the Buddha nature, and the ephemeral body is the body of teachings. The impure elemental body has no ultimate reality at all. It is like a dream, like an illusion, like a reflection, like an echo. For infinite aeons it has drifted along in the waves of birth and death, compelled by craving, never at rest for a moment, going from one state to another, piling up a mountain of bones, drinking oceans of milk. Why? Because you have no insight and do not realize the 5 clusters are fundamentally empty, without any substantial reality at all. You pursue falsehood, you are subject to birth, caught up in greedy desire, unable to be free. This is why the Buddha said, "Of the causes of all miseries, greed is fundamental. If you extinguish greed, they have no basis." If you can realize that the ephemeral body is unreal and conditional, fundamentally empty and inert, these views will not arise. There is no self, person, being, or life. All phenomena are thus. That is why it is said that the ephemeral body is the body of teachings. When awakened, there is no thing to the body of teaching. There is only the ungraspable, mysterious, universal way, listening to truth and expounding truth, the true religion with no fixations. This is why it is said, the essence of the root source is the natural, real Buddha. Host and guest. Cheng Tian was asked, "What is host within guest?" He replied, "Unrecognized when we met." Then he was asked, "What is guest within host?" Cheng Tian replied, "Poverty at home, our karma, is not yet poverty. Poverty on the road, conscious action, saddens people to death." Finally, he was asked, "What is host within host?" Cheng Tian replied, "The words of the monarch are like hyperdimensional strands. Their dissemination is like strings." Foresight and Diagnosis by Ta Sui. You must discern the result in the cause, and discern the cause in the result. Studying Zen by Jian Zhu. Do you want to study Zen? You must let it go. Let go of what? Let go of the 4 elements and 5 clusters. Let go of consciousness conditioned over incalculable time. Focus on right where you stand and try to figure out what the reason is. Keep on pondering, and suddenly the flower of mind will bloom with enlightenment, illuminating the whole universe. This can be called getting it in the mind, responding to it in action. Thereupon you can turn the earth into gold and churn the rivers into cream. Wouldn't that make life exhilarating? Do not just memorize sayings, recite words, and discuss Zen in the way based on books. The Zen way is not in books. Even if you can recite the teachings of the whole canon and the masters and all the philosophers, they are just useless words of no avail when you are facing death. The ancients sought illumined guides only after they themselves had awakened and understood, in order to pick out the rubble and completely purify their realization of truth. When they could measure pounds and ounces accurately, they were like people opening variety stores carrying all sorts of goods. The first point. Ta Sui was asked, "What is the very first point?" He replied, "Don't think falsely." Ta Sui also said, "The worthies of past ages all sought the truth and did not deceive themselves. They were not like moths throwing themselves into flames, destroying themselves in the process." Ta Sui was asked, "Buddha's truth is everywhere, so where do you teach students to plant their feet?" He replied, "The vast ocean lets fish leap freely. The endless sky lets birds fly freely." Emptiness by Tao Xin. Bodhisattvas in the beginning stage first realize that all is empty. After that, they realize that all is not empty. This is non-discriminatory wisdom. It is what is meant by the saying that form itself is emptiness. It is not emptiness as annihilation of form. The very essence of form is empty. The practice of bodhisattvas has emptiness as its realization. When beginners see emptiness, this is seeing emptiness. It is not real emptiness. Those who cultivate the way and attain real emptiness do not see emptiness or non-emptiness. They have no views. Objective Reality by Ta Sui. If objective reality is not manifest, what awakening at all is there to talk about? It is all escapism and reality avoidance. What do you call this? It is like putting a stone on grass. When you remove the stone, habit energies are still there as before. You must understand wherever you are. You must be master of the objective world, avoiding compulsion by sense objects. It is very, very difficult. There are 1,000 difficulties, a myriad difficulties. Unminding by Ying An. If you want to understand readily, just be unminding at all times and all places, and you will naturally harmonize with the path. Once you are in harmony with the path, then inside, outside, and in between are ultimately ungraspable. Immediately empty yet solid, you are far beyond dependency. This is what ancient worthies called each state of mind not touching on things, each step not positioned anywhere. Resistance does not mean walls and fences. Non-resistance does not mean open space. If you can understand in this way, mind and matter are fundamentally the same. Virtue and Enlightenment by Ta Tu. Cultivating blessings without cultivating the way has been scorned by Zen masters as delusive. Practicing charity with the wrong attitude is pointed out in Scripture as demonic activity. From this point of view, the foremost blessing is not comparable to the teaching of the mind ground. If you do not know the mind, it will certainly be hard to eliminate the seeds of greed, wrath, and folly. Even if you have heavenly blessings, after having risen, you will sink again, like a bird with its feet tethered, flying up in vain. Therefore, cultivating blessings is not as good for students of the way as is seeing essential nature. If you can see essential nature, then blessings are no longer limited. Avoid Drifting Off by Jian Zhu. If you really want to deal with birth and death, just avoid drifting off under any circumstances, whether you are dressing or eating, attending the calls of nature, walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. Be like someone who sees a ferocious tiger, totally engrossed in getting away and escaping with his life. Why bother with grasping and rejection, right and wrong, and so on? Otherwise, it's all a waste of effort. When will peace ever be attained? Don't get stuck in small successes. You must reach for the state of the ancients before you attain freedom in life and death. Otherwise, it is all something on the shore of birth and death. There's really no end in sight. The I by Tzu Sin. In the teachings, it says that all compounded things are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, and shadows. They are like dew and like lightning, and should be seen in this way. What eye do you see with? When you have fully attained this eye, you will see that the mountains, rivers, and earth do not ruin or adulterate you, nor do you ruin or adulterate the mountains, rivers, and earth. There is no more sacred doctrine therein to make for understanding or obstruction, and there is no ordinary convention to make for understanding or obstruction. But can you believe it? If you can believe it, then consciousness conditioned by ignorance turns into endless meditation. If you can't believe, endless meditation turns into consciousness conditioned by ignorance. Understanding Zen by Pai Chang. In reading scriptures and studying the doctrines, you should turn all words right around and apply them to yourself. All the verbal teachings point to the inherent nature of the immediate mirroring awareness. As long as this is not affected by anything, existent or otherwise, it is your guide. It can shine through all realms, whether they exist or not. This is adamantine wisdom, wherein you have your share of freedom and independence. If you cannot understand in this way, then even if you could recite the whole canon and all its branches of knowledge, that would only make you conceited. That shows contempt for Buddha and is not true practice. A note about the etymology of the word conceit. When someone receives something, it is common for that energy transfer to manifest with a receipt, is the objective, phenomenal, perceivable proof of reception, just as deceit is an objective deception and conceit is objective conception. Conceit is not the same as deceit. Conceit doesn't imply that one is deceiving oneself. In fact, in Zen, there is no such thing as the self in the first place. Conceit is an imposed conception, definition, or understanding of, quote, oneself, which does not correspond with the reality of Zen emptiness doctrine, which implies the true fundamental transience of all conception. Conceit is a false concept of self. Ta Sui was asked, "What is the point to concentrate on along the way?" He replied, "Don't be so self-conceited." Cleaning House by Ying An. If you want to cut off the path of birth and death, you should throw away everything you have always treasured in your mind. Then your 6 senses will naturally be clean and naked. One day you will have a flash of insight and no longer worry that the road of birth and death will not be cut off. If you do not make real application basic and instead desire lots of knowledge and intellectual understanding, considering this the subtlety of self-realization, then you will be blown by the wind of knowledge and intellectual understanding. The verbal teachings of Buddhas and Zen masters that have come down from the past are like bits of tile used to knock on a door. It is a matter of expediency that we use them as entrances into truth. Taking these verbal teachings to be the ultimate rule is like ignoring 100,000 pure clear oceans and only focusing attention on a single bubble. Act on Reality by Liao An. In learning this path, it is only important to walk on the real ground, to act on the basis of reality. The slightest phoniness, and you fall into the realm of demons. If your vision is perfectly clear and you are not confused by objects 24 hours a day, then you gain power. If your vision does not penetrate freely, how can you do what is beyond measure? Acquiescence by Ming Pen. Every point you find impenetrable in the realm of work on the way is just your own mind making obstacles. If this mind would acquiesce completely, you would arrive at the stage of Buddhas and Zen masters immediately, and there would be nothing supposedly obstructing you anymore. The right attitude for studying the way is just complete, spontaneous acquiescence. Who cares if it takes 20 or 30 years? You will be naturally at peace without the slightest bit of doubt or confusion. How can there be any obstruction again after spontaneous acquiescence? How can anyone arrive by way of externals? Note, at this advanced section of the book, the idea of coming beyond samsara, the wheel of birth and death, begins to be expounded. Learning to die is necessary for intermediate students, but eventually, the wisest sages transcend even that. One Source, One Aim by Chue An. Ultimately, why should people who brush aside the weeds looking for the way necessarily be concerned with the cycle of birth and death? It is essential to clarify the one actuality that is prior to sentient beings or non-enlightened beings and Buddhas. If you try to look for it in quietude, it goes and crouches in clamor. If you look for it in clamor, then it stands in quietude. If you want to place it in the realm of nothingness, yet it is a living thing, how can you get it? If you let action and stillness flow from one source and apply the ancient and the modern to the same aim, polishing and refining over and over without getting hung up over the time it may take, then naturally the autumn water will become still, and the golden waves will suddenly appear, shining through the mountains, rivers, and earth, the myriad distinctions and thousands of differences. Two Ailments by Wu Chun. In learning the way, there are not more than 2 kinds of sickness, either lingering in clear stillness or staying in the midst of confusion and disturbance. Those who are fierce and intense will sharply reject both of these and leap through and beyond the other side in one bound. Not only do other and self, sound and form, subject and object all vanish at once, no sign of birth and death can be found at all. Only then can you be called an uncontrived, free wayfarer with nothing more to learn, having attained the great cessation, great rest, and great bliss. But when you get to such a state, you can only be said to have realized yourself and understood yourself. If you talk about the 36 rivers of Shu, there are yet great difficulties that lie ahead. Everywhere by Huik Ung. Everywhere is where followers of the way lay down their lives. Everywhere is where followers of the way tune their minds. Everywhere is the treasury of endless capacities of followers of the way. Everywhere is not everywhere. It is called everywhere. I often see students who are narrow-minded, who gain a little bit in a limited context with a limited perspective and consider this enough, immediately insisting on stopping and resting. Eating their fill and sleeping, not taking care of anything at all, they consider themselves lively, but are destitute ghosts. Awareness by Wu Qian. When aware that the content of awareness is empty, empty awareness is complete. When hearing, the content of hearing is finite, finite hearing does not remain. Even if you can see in this way, you are already involved in process. Has it not been said, if feelings retain notions of the holy, this is still involvement in external objects? If the idea of self is not forgotten, it is the same as leaking? How could it be possible to suppose that merely discoursing on mind and nature and lecturing on Zen and the path are effective vehicles to the source? Progressive Realization by Pai Cheng. Each form, each particle is a Buddha. One form is all Buddhas. All forms, all particles are all Buddhas. All forms, sounds, scents, feelings, and phenomena are also like this, each filling all fields. This is the gross within the subtle. This is a good realm. This is the cognition and perception of all those in progress. This is the exit in life and the entrance in death of all those in progress, crossing over everything, existent and non-existent. This is what is spoken of by those in progress. This is the nirvana of those in progress. This is the unexcelled way. This is the spell that is pure to the peerless. This is the foremost teaching, considered the most profound of all teachings. No human being can reach it, but all enlightened ones keep it in mind, like pure waves able to express the purity and pollution of all waters, their deep flow and expansive function. All enlightened ones keep this in mind. If you can be like this all the time, no matter what you are doing, then the body of pure, clear light will be revealed to you.